Chapter 740. The gorgeous pale golden airflow converged into the shape of a vortex, covering the bottom of the feet, dazzling like a meteor. At first glance, it seemed that a meteor suddenly exploded, turning into a fierce impact, erupting under the feet of its owner, making the dark figure turn into a light, sweeping through the air. With the skill of leap, Noah, who directly stepped on the air and rushed forward, regardless of the wind and dust hitting his body, carrying the screaming Shinji in his hand, rushed forward, and his face was ugly to the extreme. At this time, what surged in Noah's heart was a sense of violence that could almost be described as violent. However, it was no longer directed at Shinji, a dispensable small character, but against the entire Tong family. And the magician called Zhang Yan of Tong. It didn't take much effort at all. Driven by fear, Shinji told Noah everything, including the origin of Tonging. It was not until this moment that Noah understood why Tonging would always be inferior when facing others, and was so self-abased and negative. That was entirely because Tonging had lived a life that could be said to be inhuman over the years. Because the magician qualifications of the Tong family were almost completely exhausted, Tonging was adopted by the Tong family when she was a child as an adopted daughter from outside. However, what greeted Tonging was not the fate of being a magician who was entrusted with hope, but the treatment that could be described as despair. It was only because the attribute of Tonging was not in line with the magic system of the Tong family. Therefore, the real master of the Tong family, called Zhang Yan of Tong family, attempted to bury the inferior servant called engraving insect into Tong Ying's body, and transform Tong Ying alive. Fortunately, there seemed to be some kind of mysterious power in Tong Ying's body that had been protecting the girl, so that the girl would not really fall into an inhuman hell. However, when he thought of the girl who felt inferior and often unconsciously showed a sad and depressed expression, living in such an environment for more than 10 years, and having to face the various means used by Zhang Yan of Tong to consume the mysterious power to protect herself every day, Tong Ying's fear and despair seemed to be able to be transmitted to Noah's heart, making Noah's heart violent. When they first met, Noah was inexplicably very concerned about Tong Ying. Noah didn't know whether it was because Tong Ying was also a person with a story or some other factors, but it was undeniable that Noah did care about the girl. Now, Noah finally knew the past that Tong Ying had been hiding, and his heart was anxious. That's right. He was anxious. According to Shinji of Tong, recently, Tong Ying's situation was worse than the treatment she had received in the past 10 years. That was because Tong Ying became a master and summoned Saber's servant. Originally, becoming a master was a condition that Zhang Yan of Tong Ying put forward to Tong Ying. With obtaining the Holy Grail as a condition, once Tong Ying won the Holy Grail War, Zhang Yan of Tong Ying would give up Tong Ying and let her live an ordinary life. However, after summoning Saber, Zhang Yan of Tong Ying went back on his word. After summoning Saber, for some reason, she suddenly lost the mysterious power that had been protecting her all this time. No. It shouldn't be said that she lost it. Instead, the power that had been protecting Tong Ying seemed to have replaced Tong Ying, who had very little magic power in her body, and became the source of Saber's magic power. That was why Saber's ability value was still so high after becoming the servant of Tong Ying and Shinji of Tong Ying, who didn't have much magic power in their bodies. Although he didn't know the reason, whether Saber used Tong Ying as a master or Shinji of Tong Ying as a master, it had always been the mysterious power in Tong Ying's body that provided Saber with magic power. This was obviously abnormal. However, no one cared about this abnormal situation. Including Noah, he didn't have the leisure to think about this matter now. At this moment, Noah was only thinking about one thing. That was, he had to get to Tong Ying's side. Without the protection of that mysterious power, it was easy to imagine how Zhang Yan of Tong Ying would treat Tong Ying. If it wasn't for the fact that after Tong Ying summoned Saber, even if she lost the protection of the mysterious power, Saber had replaced the mysterious power and had been protecting Tong Ying for the past few days, making Zhang Yan of Tong Ying unable to act rashly. Noah couldn't imagine what would have happened to Tong Ying. Therefore, at this time, Noah unconsciously wanted to scold Tonging. Undoubtedly, she knew that she no longer had the mysterious power to protect her. Instead, Saber had been protecting her. Tonging actually transferred Saber's control to Shinji of Tonging and let Shinji of Tonging take Saber away from her side. It was simply stupid. And now, since Saber had been summoned back by the command spell, what did that prove? It proved that Tonging was very likely to be in danger. In addition, from the beginning, Ryder had not responded to Noah's call, as if it was entangled by something, which made Noah even more anxious. At this moment, Noah used all his strength to leap forward. His figure was like a meteor, shooting through the air, flying in the direction of the Tong family's house that Shinji of Tonging had pointed out. Not long after, Noah finally saw the building of the Tong family. However, before Noah could cheer up, a wave of magic power surged from the inside of the Tong family's house. Dong! The next moment, the building of the Tong family exploded under the impact of the magic power, turning into a pile of rubble and shattering. Immediately after, two figures shot out from the rubble that had exploded. Like two thunderbolts, they spun around and suddenly collided with each other. Dong! The violent impact and the strong flash suddenly soared, illuminating the night sky above the Tong family's house extremely dazzling. Noah suddenly stopped, raised his empty hand, and blocked the impact of the attack. In Noah's hand, Tong Shinji, who had been screaming, snot, and tears flowing down his face, struggled fiercely after discovering the strong impact, as if he had been completely traumatized. Ah! I don't want to go. I don't want to go. In Noah's hand, Tong Shinji, whose face was full of snot and tears, let out a scream that was drowned by the impact. However, Noah, who was close at hand, could still hear Tong Shinji scream, and could even feel that Tong Shinji was desperately struggling, which made Noah's figure almost fall from the air. Trash! Noah, who had used leap to step in the void and used the impact to stabilize his body, clicked his tongue. Do you want me to let you go? Then I'll fulfill your wish. Tong Shinji was stunned at first, and then there was an ominous premonition in his heart, which made him take a look at his lower body. The dark moonlit night was like a giant beast, opening its bloody mouth to the high and mighty Shinji Tsushima. In Fuyuki City, the buildings were at least 100 meters above Noah and Tong Shinji. If Noah let go of Tong Shinji at this time, when he thought of this, the ominous premonition in Tong Shinji's heart became more intense, and even his body trembled, shouting at Noah. What do you want to do? Nothing. Noah sneered. Just let you fend for yourself later. After that, Noah no longer held Tong Shinji, and directly let go of his hand, letting Tong Shinji scream hysterically, fall from the sky, and soon disappeared in the dark moonlight. Only then did Noah turn around and charge forward. Under the detection of his excellent sensing ability, Noah had already recognized the two people who frequently collided with each other. One was Saber, who was summoned back. The other was Ryder, who Noah had been calling since the beginning. Why are these two servants fighting? Chapter 741. Saber and Ryder were enveloped in thick magic flames as if they had turned into a real thunderbolt. They flashed through the air, and at the same time, they violently collided with each other. Dong! Just like the collision of meteorites, a deafening roar rang out. Waves of shock waves also followed the ripples of energy that were set off. The shock waves spread in all directions, causing the atmosphere to be in chaos. Even the temperature seemed to have risen a little. The two servants, both of whom had top-notch abilities, seemed to be competing with each other. The magical power in their bodies was getting stronger and stronger, causing the impact when they collided with each other to become more and more turbulent. Dong 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 dong. The two servants, who had turned into thunderbolts, flashed through the air like two meteors chasing each other. They circled back and forth and collided with each other, causing waves of impact and muffled sounds in the air. After a while, they plunged down at the same time. Bang! With a loud crash, 2 craters with a diameter of about 2 meters were smashed open on the ground. Thick smoke and dust rose, but it was quickly dispersed by the magical flame rising from Saber and Ryder. Then, Saber, who was holding an invisible sword, and Ryder, who was holding a short sword that looked like a spike that was connected to a chain, were exposed under the moonlight from the 2 craters that looked like craters. Upon closer look, Saber was holding a girl in her arms. It was none other than Jian Tongjing. However, at this moment, Jian Tongjing seemed to have fainted. Her eyes were closed, and her body fell limp in Saber's arms. It was obvious that she had lost consciousness. Holding Jian Tongjing tightly, Saber pointed the invisible sword in her hand at Ryder in front of her. Her eyes were filled with annoyance. "What did you do to Jian Tongjing?" Hearing this, Ryder just raised his head and looked at Saber, who was hugging Tongjing tightly. His face was as emotionless as usual, and his red lips moved slightly. "Jian Tongjing's fainting has nothing to do with me." The meaning of Ryder's words was that he was not the one who caused Tosakura's coma. However, in Saber's ears, it meant, it doesn't matter if you're unconscious or not. Really? Saber held Jian Tongjing in one hand and held the sword in the other. Her face became calm. "Are you Ryder's servant? How dare you attack my master? Then you can leave now. Do you want to start a war here?" Ryder gripped the chain dagger in his hand. "Although there's no order from master, I won't refuse." As soon as he finished speaking, the 2 servants in the ruined Jiantong residence looked at each other in the 2 craters that looked like craters. The atmosphere around them was on the verge of exploding. Just as the tense atmosphere between Saber and Ryder was about to explode, a figure swooped down from the sky and landed in the ruins of Jiantong's house. The sudden appearance of the intruder made Saber and Ryder stop the hostility that was about to erupt. "You." Saber frowned, and the look in her eyes became dangerous. On the other hand, Ryder put away the chain dagger in his hand and leaped to the side of the intruder. "Master." "Ryder." Noah looked around and glanced at Saber, who was holding Jian Tongjing tightly. He realized that Jian Tongjing seemed to have lost consciousness, and his heart tightened. What happened? Jian Tongjing was attacked after she returned to Jiantong residence, Ryder explained concisely. "I saved the girl, and the girl seemed to have used the command spell to summon Saber. Then, she fainted." Ryder did not need to explain what happened next. Noah could read the hostility in Saber's eyes. Saber must have been summoned by the command spell. When she saw Jian Tongjing fainted and saw the enemy's servant appear, she thought that Ryder had attacked her master. That was why they started fighting. As for the person who attacked Jian Tongjing, there was no need to guess. Jiantong Yanzi, Noah closed his eyes and used his sensing ability to scan the entire ruined Jian Tongjing residence. After he did not find any unfamiliar aura, he opened his eyes and narrowed his eyes. "That old man is no longer here," Ryder seemed to have seen through Noah's thoughts and answered directly. "After I attacked, the old man ran away." It seemed that Jiantong Yanzi thought that Saber was not by Jian Tongjing's side today, so he could not wait to attack Jian Tongjing. As a result, Ryder had been secretly protecting Jian Tongjing. When Jian Tongjing was attacked, he showed up to save her, causing Jiantong Yanzi to return empty-handed. He sensed that something was wrong and immediately ran away, right? After understanding the whole thing, Noah looked at Jian Tongjing, who was in Saber's arms. He lifted his feet and walked in the direction of Jian Tongjing and Saber. "Let's stop there." Ryder's master. Almost at the moment when Noah lifted his feet, Saber raised the invisible sword in her hand and shot a sharp gaze directly at Noah. "If you take another step forward, I'll take it that you intend to start a fight here. I won't hold back anymore." Hearing this, Noah stopped but did not avoid Saber's gaze. He looked straight at Saber and said calmly, "You intend to fight me and Ryder when you have to protect the unconscious master. Are you serious?" Saber's face tensed up. This time, Saber understood the deeper meaning of Noah's words. In a situation where she had to protect the unconscious master, to be honest, Saber had no chance of winning against Noah and Ryder. After all, in the previous battle, Ryder had already proven that he had the same level of strength as Saber. Saber, who had fought Noah before, also understood that Master Noah was not as weak as the other magicians. His strength was definitely not inferior to that of a servant. On one hand, he had to protect the unconscious Jian Tanjing, and on the other, he had to fight against two opponents of the same level. Even Saber did not dare to boast that she would win. Even so, Saber continued to stare at Noah with determination in her eyes. It was obvious that she had made up her mind. Once Noah decided to step forward, she would choose to fight no matter how unfavorable the situation was. This made Noah smile bitterly and say such a sentence. "This morning, when I was practicing with Xiaoying in the archery department, the one who was secretly observing me was you, right?" Saber was startled when she heard this, then her expression turned serious. "So you really did notice? In other words, it was really you, right?" Noah asked. "Since you saw me practicing with Xiaoying in the dark, you should know that if I wanted to attack Xiaoying, there would be plenty of opportunities. There was no need to wait until now, right?" Saber frowned when she heard that. Indeed. With Noah's strength, if he wanted to attack Xiaoying, there would be plenty of opportunities. There was no need to wait until now. Of course, that was also because Noah did not know that Xiaoying was master at that time. Since they were both masters, they were destined to be enemies. Saber could not guarantee that Noah, who was not hostile to Jian Tanjing at that time, would not harm her now that he knew that she was master. Moreover, Saber still thought that Ryder was the one who attacked her master. Seeing this, Noah did not say anything else and turned around. "This is not the place to talk, come with me." Having said that, Noah led Ryder forward. Saber's gem-like eyes suddenly flickered a few times. She hesitated, but in the end, she carried Jian Tanjing and followed behind Noah and Ryder, leaving the Jian Tanjing residence in ruins. Chapter 742. It was nighttime. In Noah's apartment, the originally dark windows suddenly lit up, making the apartment that looked a little cold in the dark a little livelier. In the room with the light on, Saber held Tosakura and let her lie on the bed. Looking at Tosakura's closed eyes, unconscious, but more or less peaceful face, she secretly breathed a sigh of relief. In the room, except for Saber and Tosakura, there was only Noah. Ryder had already entered the state of spiritualization and went to the rooftop of the apartment to guard. In other words, excluding the unconscious Tosakura, there were only two people here, Noah and Saber. Looking at Saber, who was still wearing armor and sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at Tosakura's face, Noah, who was leaning against the wall next to the door with his arms crossed, spoke. "Is there still no sign of waking up?" Saber slowly shook her head and said softly. "The inside of the body seems to have been impacted by magic, and even the magic circuit that was originally in a closed state has entered a state of chaos. Her nerves must have been affected, and she shouldn't be able to wake up in a short time. The inside of the body has been impacted by magic." Noah wondered aloud. Why would the inside of Sakura's body be impacted by magic? "I'm not very sure," Saber said without looking back. "However, if I'm not wrong, it should be the effect of forcibly using the command spell, right?" "Forcibly using the command spell?" Noah frowned slightly, but still nodded. Originally, one of Tosakura's command spells was transferred to the Book of False Official, so that Saber's right of use was transferred to the Book of False Official, making Shinji Tosakura the master of Saber. Under such circumstances, Even if Tosakura still had 2 command spells in her hands, she was still the real master of Saber. After the servant's right of use was transferred, it was unknown whether she could use the command spell in her hands normally while Shinji Tosakura's book of false official was still in effect. Noah didn't know whether Tosakura's command spell could still be used in this situation. But it seemed that because there were 2 people controlling Saber, Tosakura, who used the command spell, was more or less affected. If Tosakura was a magician, then it would be fine. The problem was that Tosakura, let alone a magician, didn't even open the magic circuit in her body. There was only an extremely weak magic. Since there was another person controlling Saber, it was not surprising that forcefully using the command incantation would be affected. At this moment, Saber suddenly spoke again. Of course, originally, I even had some doubts about whether Sakura used the command spell to summon me. These words caused Noah to raise his eyebrows, and he subconsciously uttered, "That's right." What does that mean? Saber didn't answer immediately, but turned her head and looked straight at Noah, as if she wanted to see through Noah. After a long time, she closed her eyes. You should already know that the one providing me with magic now is not Sakura, nor is it Shinji Tosakura. Even if these 2 people are my master, the one providing me with magic has always been the mysterious power in Sakura's body that has always been protecting her, right? Noah didn't hide it and directly nodded, admitting that he knew the current state of Saber and Tosakura. To be honest, regarding this matter, I have been thinking about it for a long time. Saber looked up slightly and said to Noah, "Logically speaking, the one who provides me with magic should be master. Let's not talk about Momotsukis Shinji first. Ever since I was summoned to this era by Sakura, I feel that the channel that provides me with magic is not connected to Sakura, who should be master. Instead, it was connected to another place from the beginning. The command spell given to the master is the same. It should be connected to the magic circuit of Sakura, who is the master, but in my feeling, it is also not connected to Sakura's magic circuit, but connected to another place." Saber said in a deep voice. "It's as if there is another existence that is my real master." Hearing Saber's words, Noah was silent. This situation was indeed quite strange. However, this also explained why Saber's ability value was so outstanding when the master, Tosakura and Shinji Tosakura, had very little magic. Then, there was only one question left. What was the mysterious power that had been protecting Tosakura? Why was Saber's mana channel connected to the mysterious power when she was summoned? Why would the mysterious power provide her with mana? Why was Tonging no longer protected by the mysterious power? Was it because Tosakura herself did not have much magic, so the mysterious power automatically connected the channel? Or was the mysterious power related to Saber? Or perhaps, both of them? Although I don't know if the command spell on Sakura can be used when Shinji Tosakura has the Book of the False Official, I feel that it should not be used by Sakura herself. While Noah was deep in thought, Saber's voice slowly echoed and passed into Noah's ears. Perhaps it is the channel that is connected to me and provides me with magic, so that the mysterious power that can't spare any extra magic to protect Sakura is automatically activated when Sakura is in danger, and that the command spell is triggered. Hearing this, Noah was surprised. Can the mysterious power give you orders? I guess it's just some sort of automatic protection function, Saber said. According to Sakura, the mysterious power automatically appeared when she was in danger in the past without Sakura's consent and protected Sakura. From this point, it is possible that the automatic protection function of the mysterious power triggered the activation of the command spell, and after the command spell was activated, because it did not receive the host's order, it directly executed the choice of summoning me. Saber had just said that not only the channel of magic, but even the command spell that should be connected to Tosakura's magic circuit seemed to be connected to the mysterious power, making Saber seem to have another real master. Then, if the mysterious power really activated the automatic protection function, it might really trigger the command spell and summon Saber to Sakura's side. Of course, at best, this is just my feeling. Saber added. However, I think that this should be the case. Sakura fainted from the impact of magic, and it could also be caused by the automatic activation of the command spell. Listening to this, Noah's head hurt more and more. Noah could understand Saber's words. However, the most fundamental problem was still not solved. What was the mysterious power? That was the most fundamental problem. To be able to ignore the contract between the master and the servant, to take the initiative to establish a channel of magic with Saber, and to connect the command spell that controlled Saber, and to trigger the activation of the command spell when it automatically protected Sakura. What was the mysterious power? Moreover, automatic protection. At the end of the day, it seemed that this automatic protection function had protected Tosakura for more than 10 years, and when Tosakura's magic was insufficient, it automatically connected the channel of magic with Saber, and at the moment when Tosakura was in danger, it forcibly triggered the command spell. Everything seemed to be related to the nature of the protection. That power thoroughly displayed the nature of protection to the fullest. Noah had always been a little concerned about the power that could perform protection to this extent. The more he thought about it, the more concerned Noah became. Under Saber's gaze, he came to Tosakura's side. Chapter 743. Looking at Yutonging, who was lying on the bed and sleeping peacefully, Noah sat on the edge of the bed and reached out his hand towards Yutonging. Paw! Just as Noah was about to touch Tonging, a slender hand suddenly reached out and grabbed Noah's wrist tightly. Noah was not surprised at all. He just turned his head and looked to the side. Saber, who was wearing armor, was staring at Noah with her gem-like eyes. Her gaze was as clear as the surface of a lake, as if she wanted to see through Noah completely. Noah did not avoid Saber's gaze. Instead, he met Saber's gaze and looked back at her calmly. Seeing this, Saber's clear eyes rippled again. After a while, as if she had concluded that Noah would not do anything to her master, Saber slowly let go of Noah's wrist. However, she did not shift her gaze away from Noah. Obviously, although she had chosen to agree with Noah's actions, Saber did not completely trust Noah and was still wary of him. This was not surprising. After all, Noah and Tonging were both masters. As long as they wanted to win and obtain the Holy Grail, masters were destined to kill each other. Compared to dealing with servants who were much more powerful than ordinary humans, it was obviously easier to deal with masters. As long as the master was killed, there would be no reason for them to appear in this world. Unless they had the ability to act alone, the servant who lost the master would disappear and withdraw from the war. Therefore, to the servant, protecting the master's safety was almost more important than hiding their real name and their trump card. Today, Noah and Saber met for the first time. In terms of identity, the two were also enemies. Therefore, it was natural that Saber would be wary of Noah. Or rather, to allow Noah to check on Tong Ying's condition and follow Noah to the enemy's base camp, Saber had already made a lot of concessions. Therefore, Noah would not ask her to trust him. Under Saber's surveillance, he pressed his hand on Tong Ying's hand and closed his eyes. When he was in the Suigun Plains Academy, Noah felt his own magical aura on Tong Ying's body. Now, Noah fully activated his sensing ability. Together with a trace of magical power, he injected it into Tong Ying's body through her hand. It flowed slowly like a stream. At this time, Noah's magical power carried his own sensing ability like a radar. While it flowed through Tong Ying's body, it also allowed Noah's sensing ability to extend into Tong Ying's body and explore it bit by bit. It didn't take long for Noah to feel that he seemed to have entered a wonderful space composed of electric wires. The electric wiring was the magic circuit of Tsushima. Because Tong Ying's magic circuit had not been activated at all, Noah could only feel an extremely weak magical power wandering outside the magic circuit. Even after going so deep, he could only feel such a small amount of magical power. No wonder Noah could not feel Tong Ying's magical power when he was outside. In this wonderful space full of electric wires, Noah looked around and soon stopped in one direction. There was a passage that was much wider, more dazzling and brighter than any of the magic circuits in Tong Ying's body. It seemed to extend from the depths of Tong Ying's body and directly connected to a void. Above, an extremely considerable amount of magical power was surging, passing through the passage from the depths of Tong Ying's body, flowing into the connected void and disappearing. No. It did not disappear. Instead, it flowed into the body of another existence. There was no need to think about it. It was the magical power passage that connected the mysterious power in Tong Ying's body and saber. Looking at the passage that looked like a transparent column that led to the sky, Noah's eyes narrowed little by little. Because the magical power flowing in that passage all had the aura of Noah's magical power. What did this prove? It proved that the magical power should have been Noah's. Why? Why was his magical power in such a place? This was Noah's biggest question. Noah did have the experience of injecting magical power into Tong Ying's body several times. But that should have been consumed in treating Tong Ying's foot injury, right? Only when the magical power was directly used could one person's magical power be injected into another person's body. And if one person wanted to use and store another person's magical power, then it could only be done by replenishing the magical power. The passage that extended from the depths of Tong Ying's body was obviously providing Noah's magical power to saber. Using an outsider's magical power in one's own body like this could only be achieved by replenishing the magical power. At least, that was the case in this world. Could it be that his magical power was not consumed in treating Tong Ying's injury, but because of the mysterious power, it was stored in an alternative way and used? At this time, Noah thought of Tong Ying's small tuft of hair that had somehow turned purple, but had his own magical aura. Don't tell me it's because my magic is being used in such an unconventional way that I'm not even a magician, and the magic circuit was caused by the body of Tong Ying, who hasn't even been activated, right? Just like the effect of the command spell on Tong Ying's body. Thinking of this, Noah hid all the guesses in his heart, and his mind followed the other end of the magical passage that extended to saber, that was, the depths of Tong Ying's body, and gradually sank. This sinking, how long did it take? In this case, the concept of time did not work at all. At a certain moment, following the magical passage, Noah, who had been sinking into the depths of Tong Ying's body, suddenly saw a light in front of his eyes. A very bright, very familiar light. That light was the end of one end of Saber's mana pathway. When Noah saw the full appearance of the light, his mind was shocked. Noah saw it clearly. At the end of the magical passage, there was an object in the dazzling light. Scabbard. A scabbard with eye-catching blue enamel as decoration on the golden metal surface, and a long-lost fairy script in the middle, flashing with dazzling brilliance. That scabbard, for Noah, was very familiar. Because that was the relic that Noah accidentally lost in another parallel world. It was known as the Utopia away from the mortal world, and also known as the Fairyland. It had an extremely deep relationship with King Arthur, who was once the King of Great Britain in Kettle's mythology. Through the hands of Gaia and Alay, it was the relic that recognized Noah as its master. Avalon now, the relic that had been lost once, in this form, once again appeared in front of Noah's eyes. Looking at the scabbard that was flowing with dazzling brilliance, Noah fell into a daze for a moment. Why? Why is my scabbard here? While Noah's heart was filled with doubts, the golden scabbard was like a bird that had met its master, and it made a cheerful vibration sound. Immediately, a burst of dazzling light burst out from the gorgeous scabbard, like a wave, drowning Noah's figure. Noah almost subconsciously closed his eyes. At the same time, a picture drilled into Noah's mind. It was a picture of two black-haired little girls playing in a park under the sunset. In the picture, one of the two black-haired little girls ran out of the park. The other suddenly drilled into the grass in the park and dug up the grass there. A gorgeous scabbard appeared there. When the little girl curiously touched it, it turned into a light and drilled into her body. Chapter 744. When Noah opened his eyes again, he looked at Jitanjing, who was lying on the bed, with a complicated expression. Noah really did not expect this. He did not expect that his scabbard would be lost to another parallel world during the battle with Bio, and that it would be obtained by Jitanjing. At that time, in order to ensure that Qingzi and Yuzhu would be able to deal with Orange, Noah left Avalon on the battlefield where Qingzi, Yuzhu, and Orange were having a magic battle. He let Avalon protect Qingzi and Yuzhu. In the end, because of Orange's discovery, Avalon was directly sent flying by Orange. It fell into the space crack created during the battle between Noah and Bio, and was lost. It was at that time that Avalon was lost to this parallel world, and it was obtained by Jitanjing, who was still a child at that time. In order to ensure the safety of Qingzi and Yuzhu, at that time, Noah stored a lot of magic power in Avalon. Perhaps it was because of the protective nature of Avalon itself, in addition to the fact that Noah, in order to protect Qingzi and Yuzhu at that time, not only did he store enough magic to use it, but he also let Avalon enter automatic use mode. Avalon, which was touched by Tong Yingying, automatically integrated into Tong Yingying's body. In order to protect Tong Yingying, he used Noah's magic to protect Tong Yingying for more than 10 years, right? Such a coincidence actually caused Jitanjing's originally tragic fate to be changed, and it was delayed until now. It was delayed until now, when Noah once again came in front of Avalon. Noah had always been inexplicably concerned about Jitanjing. In the past, he did not know why, but now, Noah finally understood. It was because, more than 10 years ago in this parallel world, Noah and Jitanjing had formed an indistinct but inseparable relationship without each other's knowledge. Of course, Avalon itself only had the nature of protection. It would definitely not take the initiative to connect with Saber in order to reduce the burden on Tong Sakura and provide the magic stored in the scabbard that belonged to Noah to Saber, thus causing Tong Sakura, who was supposed to be protected, to lose her protection. There must be another reason why Noah's Avalon would take the initiative to connect with Saber's magic power. Noah already had a guess about this reason. At that moment, Noah turned his head and looked at Saber, who had been staring at him all this time. He opened his mouth and said such a sentence. "You are King Arthur of Great Britain, right?" When this sentence came out of Noah's mouth and echoed in the room, the moment it drilled into Saber's ears, Saber's gem-like pupils suddenly shrank, and a trace of shock appeared on her face. Seeing this, Noah knew that his guess was completely correct. King Arthur of Great Britain. The famous Night King in Celtic mythology. The one who recruited the Knight of the Lake, Lancelot, whose reputation was no less than his own, single-handedly established the Knights of the Round Table, with countless elite knights under his command. After inheriting the throne, he won 12 major battles in a short 10 years, bringing the whole of Great Britain to its peak. Such an existence was actually a woman. And such a slender young girl. Noah's shock was imaginable. However, if Saber was the Night King, then why would Avalon connect with her magic power and provide Noah's magic power to her? Phenomenon could be explained. After all, before it recognized Noah as its master, Avalon belonged to the Night King. Legend had it that the Night King of Great Britain was once blessed by the Lake Elves, and received an invincible holy sword from the Lake Elves. That was the holy sword that symbolized King Arthur's most powerful and most honorable period. It was at the pinnacle of the category of holy sword and was not forged by humans. Instead, it was one of the ultimate godly armaments that was born as the strongest fantasy, by crystallizing inside the planet using people's yearning as raw material. The godly armaments that were originally managed by the Star Elves passed through the hands of the Lake Elves and into the hands of King Arthur, becoming the symbol of this king. And Avalon was the scabbard of this holy sword that was at the pinnacle of mythology. Originally, after the Night King passed away and became a heroic spirit, it should have also become the symbol of the existence of King Arthur's power in the form of a noble artifact. However, when the Night King was alive, he accidentally lost this important scabbard, allowing Avalon to be passed down to this day, becoming one of the few noble artifacts that truly existed in this world. Then, under the modification of Gaia and Alea, this scabbard became Noah's noble artifact. Even so, Avalon was still the possession of the Night King. At least, it used to be. Therefore, when Saber was summoned by the former master, the scabbard had a reaction. In order to reduce the burden on Saber, who was the target of protection but lacked magic power, and to replace Saber to maintain the existence of its former master, it took the initiative to connect with the magic power circuit and provide magic power to Saber. Or rather, it was precisely because of this scabbard in his body that the Night King was summoned by Jian Tonging as a saber. After all, with the nature of a holy relic, Avalon, which once belonged to Saber, was enough to be used as a catalyst to summon a servant and summon Saber. And it was because of Avalon's special treatment for Saber that this scabbard would play a wholeheartedly protective role no matter whose servant Saber became. While reducing the burden on Tsaritsu and Sakura, it also provided magic power to its former master to maintain its existence and strength. In addition, when Saber was in danger, Avalon also triggered the command spell and summoned Saber. It was a power that could carry out the nature of protection to the end. Other than Avalon, who else could do this? If King Arthur's holy sword symbolized power itself, then King Arthur's scabbard symbolized protection itself. Even magic could not interfere with it, and it had the ability to defend itself. Even if it recognized Noah as its master, even if it was no longer Saber's noble artifact, this scabbard still took the initiative to take on the responsibility of protecting its former master and its host. This was Avalon. After understanding everything, Noah slowly exhaled and looked at Saber Tonging, who was still unconscious, as if he could see the gorgeous scabbard, and smiled. "Thank you for your hard work." As if in response to Noah's comfort, Saber Tonging's body flowed with a faint brilliance. Before Saber had time to ask how Noah knew her true identity, she caught a glimpse of this brilliance and was suddenly stunned. She frowned and stood up blankly. "What is this? It feels so familiar." "Of course, it's familiar. That's something you lost before." Noah sighed in his heart, then stood up and said to Saber, "Saber will stay here for a while. Xiaoying will stay here for the time being. What are your plans before Xiaoying wakes up?" Hearing this, although Saber had a lot of questions in her heart, she did not change the topic and echoed Noah's question. "Of course I will be here, responsible for protecting Saber Tonging." "Understood." Noah nodded and said so. "Then, before Saber Tonging wakes up, you will stay here. However, I have a partnership with another master, so I will ask her to come over tomorrow. When the time comes, we will discuss how to deal with the next step." Saber pondered for a moment, then nodded without any objections. The night passed quietly. Chapter 745. After Saber moved into the apartment, Noah, who had completely solved the mystery of Tima Tonging, could finally have a good night's sleep. In the past few days, Noah basically did not have a good night's sleep. On the first night after arriving in this world, Noah woke up in the early hours of the morning because of the appearance of the stigmata. On the second night after arriving in this world, because of summoning Rider, Noah made a lot of noise all night. Although he did not lack sleep, he could not sleep well either. On the third night after arriving in this world, he was attacked by Lancer. After knowing the existence of Berserker, Noah also worked hard all night because of this. On the fourth night after Noah arrived in this world, Noah and Rin Enbin encountered Berserker in the forest. After a battle with Berserker, they formed an alliance and formed a cooperative relationship. Then, they met the mysterious blonde man. Noah had a lot of things to think about that night, so he couldn't sleep well. Then, yesterday, on the fifth night after arriving in this world, Noah was attacked by Saber, who was brought by the fake master Shinji Tima. As a result, it involved the matter between Tima Tongjing and the Tima Tongjing family, and learned about Tima Tongjing's experience and secrets in the past 10 years. Also, the discovery of Avalon. In other words, after arriving in this world, Noah had already spent a long 5 days and 5 nights. Today was the 6th day since Noah arrived in this world. Undoubtedly, so many things had happened one after another, but only 5 days had passed. Even Noah felt that it was a bit unbelievable. However, after so many twists and turns, the Holy Grail War had officially begun. Tima Tongjing summoned Saber on the night when Noah and Rin Enbin encountered Berserker and concluded a cooperative relationship with each other, and exchanged the right to use Saber to Shinji Tima. According to Saber, that night, Shinji Tima went to the church to report and learn from the supervisor of the Holy Grail War that assassin had been summoned. In other words, the 7 masters and the 7 servants had all been gathered. Next, the Holy Grail War officially began. Of course, if people knew that before the Holy Grail War began, there were 3 servants who had already met and could not fight, their expressions would be very interesting. The next day, Noah, who finally had a good night's sleep, woke up, after a simple wash, and then went to the room where Tima Tongjing and Saber were resting. Noah's apartment was originally 2 bedrooms and 1 living room. Therefore, in addition to the room where Noah was sleeping, the other room was given to Tima's and Saber to rest. Opening the door and walking into the room, Noah's expression, more or less. Because, Saber's sleep, because, Saber was also, Saber's, was. At this time, the armor on the girl, who was so slender that it was impossible to associate her with the Queen of Knights of Great Britain in Celtic mythology, had disappeared, revealing the blue and white dress under the armor. After removing the breastplate, gauntlets, and boots, the young lady was dressed in a blue and white formal attire. She leaned against the edge of Yu Tongying's bed, her head resting next to Yu Tongying's. In the standard sitting posture of a young lady, she fell into a deep sleep. The delicate and lovely doll-like sleeping face, and Tima Tongjing's peaceful face, made people feel warm in their hearts, and they couldn't bear to break such a beautiful scene. Unfortunately, Saber was not an ordinary girl, but a heroic spirit who came as a servant. As the winner of 12 major battles in the past, Saber was also the strongest of the 7 classes in the Holy Grail War. The girl woke up almost as soon as Noah opened the door and walked into the room. Sorry. Seeing Saber wake up, Noah subconsciously apologized. Did I wake you up? No, it's not like that. Saber shook her head gently. I've had enough sleep. Even if you didn't come, I would have woken up. Is that so? Noah scratched his cheek. I thought you didn't need to sleep like Ryder. Yes, as a spirit, a servant doesn't need to sleep. Saber raised her eyes slightly and looked at Noah. It's just that, if I enter a state of sleep, I can avoid the consumption of magic caused by unnecessary activities. So, for me, sleep is still necessary. Noah raised his eyebrows. You should have enough magic, right? Do you still need to avoid unnecessary consumption? Although it was somewhat boastful, Noah was confident that the magic power he had left in Avalon, even though it had consumed a lot in order to protect Tong Yingying in the past 10 years, should be barely enough to provide a servant with enough magic power. In addition, in the past, Noah had infused magic into Tong Ying several times in order to heal her foot injury. Although the magic was not much, most of it seemed to be absorbed by Avalon, which led to the recovery of Avalon, which was about to exhaust its magic and protected Tong Ying for a while. Saber's ability value was almost the same as Berserker's, and her magic value was also the highest level of A, so Saber should have enough magic, right? Did she still need to avoid unnecessary consumption? I'm only doing this as a precaution. Saber turned her gaze to Tong Ying. After I was summoned to this era and connected to the mana pathway to provide me with mana to maintain my existence and power, the mysterious power in Xiao Ying's body lost its protective effect. This proves that the mysterious power doesn't have enough mana to provide me with mana and protect Xiao Ying at the same time. This also proves that the power is actually limited. Currently, it's enough to provide me with mana, but I don't know when that power will be exhausted by me. Thus, it's best to avoid wasting mana if possible. Hearing this, Noah understood. Indeed, although the remaining magic in the scabbard was enough to provide Saber, it was also limited. After all, the magic in the scabbard would not automatically recover. It would need to be provided by its master, Noah, to continue to be effective and useful. Under such circumstances, after providing it to Saber, it would not be able to protect Tong Ying at the same time. Judging from the remaining magic in the scabbard, it would be fine if Saber only carried out her daily activities and ordinary battles. However, if she used a noble phantasm that required a large amount of magic to support, it would be a little bad. What's more, Saber's noble phantasm was an A++ level. The higher the level, the more magic it would need to consume. Therefore, if Saber used a noble phantasm, it would probably only take 2 or 3 times for the magic in the scabbard to be exhausted, right? Thinking of this, Noah came to Tong Ying's side and sat on the edge of the bed. He held Tong Ying's hand and the magic in his body surged violently into Tong Ying's body. This time, Noah felt it. After the magic was poured into Tong Ying's body, the golden scabbard trembled violently and absorbed a large amount of magic flowing in Tong Ying's body. Perhaps it was because it had not received enough magic from its master for more than 10 years. The scabbard was like a whale sucking in water. It absorbed a large amount of magic that Noah instilled into it, causing the bright brilliance to become more and more dazzling. At this moment, Saber suddenly exclaimed, My power! Hearing Saber's exclamation, Noah was also stunned. When he saw Saber's current ability value, he was stunned. Occupation, Saber Master, Tong Ying real name, Altoria Pendragon attribute, ordered good ability value, strength, A durability, A agility, A magic, A+ luck, A noble phantasm, A++. Chapter 746. Job rank, Saber Master, Tosikurial name, Artoria Pendragon attribute, ordered good ability value, strength, A durability, A agility, A magic power, A+ luck, A noble phantasm, A++. Looking at Saber's ability value at this moment, Noah was completely stunned. For a moment, he couldn't react. Originally, as the job rank with the highest requirement for ability value, a servant who could become Saber would only be a hero spirit of the highest level. There would definitely not be a hero spirit that was too weak to occupy this job rank. Therefore, Saber was called the strongest job rank. And the Night King, whose real name was Artoria, was also worthy of being called the strongest job rank. Originally, her ability value was enough to be compared to the monster Berserker. However, now, Saber's ability value was not only comparable to Berserker's, but also slightly higher than that monster's. If it were not for Berserker's noble phantasm, Saber would definitely be the strongest servant in this Holy Grail war. No, considering that Saber's noble phantasm was still A++ level, once she used her noble phantasm, perhaps even Berserker would not be Saber's opponent. Why? Why did Saber's ability value suddenly increase? Just as such a question emerged in his mind, Noah reacted. As mentioned before, it was not only the magic channel. Even the command spell that was supposed to be connected to Tosakura's magic circuit seemed to be connected to Avalon's body along with the channel. This caused Avalon to trigger the activation of the command spell because of its automatic protection characteristics when Tosakura was in danger. This way, it was as if Avalon had become Saber's master. And the ability value of a servant was generally dependent on the magic power of the master. Because Avalon was special to Saber, no matter if Saber's master was Tosakura or Shinji Tosakura, it had always been the one who provided the magic power. Saber's ability value did not change in the slightest because the control was in the hands of Tosakura or Shinji Tosakura. This further proved that Avalon was in existence similar to Saber's master. At the very least, the one who determined Saber's power was not Tamahira Sakura or Tamahira Shinji, but Avalon. Therefore, Avalon was more like Saber's master. That was why Saber had said, "It's like there's another being who is my true master." Then, under such circumstances, after the magic stored in Avalon, which was more like Saber's master than Tong Yingying, had undergone a tremendous change due to Noah's infusion, it was not surprising that Saber's ability value as a servant would also change. In other words, because of Noah, Saber had become stronger. However, if Avalon was Saber's true master, then as the master of Avalon, what was Noah to Saber? After all, in the current situation, rather than Avalon providing Saber with magic power, it was better to say that Noah was providing Saber with magic power. Thinking of this, Noah could not help but smile bitterly. Then, Saber, who reacted, frowned and looked at Noah. "What did you do?" Saber could feel that Noah had instilled magic into Tosakura's body. However, Saber did not understand why her own power suddenly increased after Noah instilled magic into Tosakura's body. But there was no doubt that such a change must be related to Noah's infusion of magic into Tosakura's body. This made Saber look at Noah with a sharp gaze. Although this change was a good thing for Saber, when she thought of another master doing something to her own master and affecting her as a servant, Saber, who had not completely eliminated her hostility towards Noah, who was her master, was annoyed. "I respect you as a rare master in this era, so I chose to trust you and bring Sakura here," Saber said as she stared at Noah. "But if you plan to do something to my master, then we have nothing to say, Rider's master." Last night, Noah suddenly inexplicably found out Saber's true identity. If it were not for the fact that Tosakura was not a magician and could easily be controlled by others, and thus leaked important information, Saber would definitely suspect that Noah used some kind of magic to read Tosakura's memory. Even so, Saber had enough reason to suspect that Noah did something to Tosakura. Otherwise, Saber would not have suddenly changed like this. Seeing that Saber's eyes were already filled with hostility, Noah's bitter smile deepened. "Forget it, even if I tell you that I did nothing, you probably won't believe me. So, I won't say anything. Whether or not I really did something to Sakura, let time prove everything." After that, Noah stood up and walked out of the room. "Before that, my partner should be almost here. If you want to know how we'll deal with you now, then come over." Leaving these words, Noah walked out of the room. Noah wanted to try and see if Saber could be upgraded if he continued to replenish Avalon's magic. However, looking at Saber, she probably wouldn't let Noah contact Tosakura without any reason. After the replenishment just now, Avalon already had a lot of magic stored in it. While supplying it to Saber, it should be able to continue protecting Tosakura. So, let's stop here. In the room, Saber had been staring at Noah's back. She only lowered her head when Noah's back disappeared from her sight. Her beautiful brows were furrowed. She glanced at the sleeping Mitsubishi Sakura and felt her current state. Then, she murmured to herself. "That man, he must be hiding something." About half an hour later, Rin Enosaka arrived at Noah's apartment. Sitting on a chair, Rin Enosaka looked at Noah, who was leisurely leaning on the sofa, and Saber, who was standing at the door of Tosakura's room. Rin Enosaka's expression was complicated. After a long time, Rin Enosaka took a deep breath and looked directly at Noah. "I know the details. Sakura has indeed become a master, and she summoned Saber's servant. Am I right to understand that?" Noah sighed inwardly when he heard Rin Enbin's words. Just now, not only did Noah tell Rin and Osaka about Tosakura's situation, but he also told Rin and Osaka about the girl's past 10 years. After hearing about Tosakura's situation, Rin and Osaka's face was filled with shock, disbelief, anger, and regret. It was enough to prove that Rin and Osaka didn't care about Tosakura. But now, Rin and Osaka didn't mention Tosakura's situation. Instead, he brought up the topic related to the Holy Grail War. Rin and Osaka chose to face this matter as a magician. From Shinji Tosakura's words, Noah knew that Tosakura actually came from another magic family in Fuyuki City. Because there was already a sister who was the heir, she was adopted by the Tosakura family. Therefore, Noah suspected Rin and Osaka was Tosakura's sister. Chapter 747. House and Osaka was the manager of the spiritual veins in Fuyuki City. In this land, House and Osaka was the only magic family that used the spiritual veins. The Midori family moved to Fuyuki City from the outside later, and together with Ain's Balin, they established the Yuzan family, creating the Holy Grail War magic family. In other words, the only magic families in Fuyuki City were House and Osaka and House Mitsuru. Since Tong Sakura was the descendant of a magician adopted from another magician family, Noah really couldn't think of which magician family Tong Sakura was adopted from except for the Inaka family. Coupled with Rin and Osaka's complicated feelings towards House Mitsuru, this made Noah more and more certain. Rin and Osaka was House Mitsuru's sister. Things were really getting more and more complicated. With this thought, Noah just said to Rin and Osaka. And then? What do you think? I'd like to ask, what do you think? Rin and Osaka didn't answer Noah's question. Instead, he asked a question. Now that you know Sakura is a master, you brought her back, don't you have any thoughts? Hearing Rin and Osaka's words, Saber, who was standing at the door of House Mitsuru's room, turned her gaze and looked at Noah. Under the gaze of the two girls, Noah smiled indifferently. If I said I really didn't have any thoughts, I just wanted to bring Sakura back, so I brought Sakura back, would you believe me? As soon as he said this, regardless of Saber's reaction, Rin and Osaka slammed his hands on the table, stood up, and put his face in Noah's direction and shouted angrily. Do you understand the relationship between masters in the Holy Grail War? I know what you want to say, don't you want to say that we should kill each other? In the face of Rin Enbin's anger, Noah seemed to have seen through Rin Enbin's hesitation and said without changing his expression. Since that's the case, Xiaoying is in the room now. In order to obtain victory and eliminate the enemy, I'll hand her over to you, who is also the master. It doesn't matter if you kill or torture her, it's up to you. I won't stop you. Go ahead. Hearing this, Rin Enbin's expression froze, and even his breathing stopped. Saber, who saw this scene, seemed to understand something and fell silent. Seeing this, Noah sighed and said to Rin Enbin. If you can't do it yourself, can you please not force others to do it? Rin Enbin opened his mouth slightly, but he couldn't say anything. Because he was speechless, he couldn't refute Noah. He felt angry at himself and took a deep breath. I won't ignore Xiaoying's identity as master. Even if I don't do anything to Xiaoying, I will take away her command seal and make her withdraw from this Holy Grail War. You said that you won't stop me, right? I hope you do as you say. After saying this, Rin Enbin turned around and looked in the direction of Tong Ying's room. There, Saber quietly looked at Rin Enbin. Her delicate face slowly tensed up. Needless to say, as Tong Ying's servant, even if Noah didn't interfere, Saber wouldn't sit still and watch Rin Enbin take away Tong Ying's command seal. On the other hand, Rin Hosoka didn't seem to have any intention of backing down. He stared at Saber fearlessly, and the atmosphere suddenly became tense. Noah, on the other hand, was just sitting there as he had said earlier. It was obvious that he wasn't going to intervene. In fact, Noah didn't have any intention of interfering. As long as he was sure that Rin Enbin wouldn't harm Tong Ying, that was enough. As for taking away Tong Ying's command seal, making Tong Ying lose her status as master and withdraw from this Holy Grail war, to be honest, Noah didn't oppose it. In fact, he had the same idea. After all, Noah couldn't let the gentle girl participate in this kind of battle. The reason why he didn't do it directly was because he wanted to wait until Tong Ying woke up. Noah didn't know if Tong Ying herself was willing to continue being master. Even if he had his own thoughts, he wouldn't ignore Tong Ying's thoughts and make a decision on his own. Rin Anbin was different. "Archer, are you there?" Archer appeared in a blue mist behind Rin Enbin. He looked at Saber in front of him and smiled. "My opponent is Saber, one of the strongest classes in the game. Her strength seems to be slightly above that of the great hero who went berserk. Ling, you really do find me the most difficult opponent to deal with every time." Archer said this, but he also lowered his hands, which made Saber react. "Are you Archer's servant?" Saber's slender body was instantly covered by a silver metallic breastplate, gauntlets, and combat boots. She clenched her fist, and in the midst of a sharp gust of wind, she gripped her invisible weapon and pointed it at Archer. "Archer, do you think you can win against me in such a narrow space?" There was no doubt that Archer was good at long-range attacks. Once they started fighting, Archer would probably be instantly killed by Saber in this apartment, right? Archer just showed a fearless smile. "What a coincidence. My ability is not limited to just a bow." Archer opened his hand slightly. "Trace on." It was an extremely short sentence. Rather than calling it a chant, it would be more accurate to call it an incantation to oneself. Under the incantation, the magic on Archer's body suddenly became active. Archer opened his palm and a ball of magic light appeared. The magic light turned into the outline of two weapons and fell into Archer's hands. It was a pair of short swords that were only half the length of the dagger. They were black and white, as if the black and white ends of the Tai Chi diagram were directly separated. Swords. Saber was surprised. Not only Saber, but even Noah was a little surprised. Then, he remembered one of Archer's skills. Magic, C.A+, the magic that he had learned in his previous life was generally ordinary. Before he became a heroic spirit, it was very difficult for him to even use enhance. However, he had another magic that could be said to be unique. He could replicate almost perfect weapons, including the composition of materials. When he replicated, he could even read the effects of the master's skills. Even the servant's noble phantoms and combat skills were no exception. Only when he used this magic, the skill would be upgraded to A+ level. Only when special magic was used would an exception be made to upgrade the skill to A+ level. He could replicate weapons almost perfectly. When he replicated, he could even read the effects of the owner's skills. Even the servant's noble phantoms and combat skills were no exception. The pair of swords was replicated with this skill. "I'm sorry, Saber." Archer pointed the white short sword in Saber's direction. He seemed to be satisfied with Saber's surprised expression and smirked. "Although I'm an archer, I prefer close combat. You can call me a mutant or pretend, but don't think that I don't have the power to fight, heroic spirit of the sword." "Is that so?" Saber calmed down and raised the invisible sword in her hand and stared at Archer. At the same time, Rin Tozaka silently retreated to the side, but his eyes kept glancing at the direction of Tosakura's room. It seemed that he wanted to break in and take away Tosakura's command spell when Archer was entangled with Saber. Just when the battle between Saber and Archer was about to explode, Noah, who was sitting on the sofa and watching, suddenly felt something. A weak aura suddenly appeared in the apartment and went into one of the rooms. It was Tosakura's room. Chapter 748. The sudden aura caused Noah to be slightly startled. Then, his expression changed and he abruptly stood up. Not only Noah, but Saber and Archer, who had intuition and mind's eye, also sensed the abnormality. The atmosphere between the two of them froze for a moment, and everything froze in the air. The first one to move was naturally Saber, who was the closest to Tanjing's room, even at the door. Whoosh! Saber did not hesitate to turn around and suddenly rushed into Tanjing's room. Bang! In the next moment, in the small room of the apartment, a muffled sound like an explosion suddenly resounded. Accompanied by a wave of impact, the door was sent flying, setting off a violent gust of wind that blew towards the hall outside. In front of Rin Isaka, who did not have time to react, Archer used his pair of black and white short swords to block in front of his master, blocking the violent wind. Noah, who was the furthest away from Tanjing's room, was the least affected. Almost at the same time that the muffled explosion and violent wind blew out of Tanjing's room, he dodged the wind and rushed into Tanjing's room. Soon after, a scene filled with thick smoke and dust appeared before Noah's eyes. The entire room was being ravaged by the violent wind and waves, turning into a sorry state. At the front of the room, where the window should have been, a huge hole had been blasted open. Fragments of the wall continued to fall. As for Tanjing, she had already disappeared in the direction of the broken bed, and even Saber, who rushed into the room, had disappeared. Seeing this, Noah completely subconsciously understood the next step. He rushed in front of the big hole in the wall and looked down at the bottom of the apartment. Tanjing's room just happened to be facing the direction of the main road. So, behind the apartment was not a main road, but an open field. On the open field, Saber, who was holding an invisible sword, tightly held Tanjing, who was still unconscious, and stared at the figure in front of her. It was a figure that looked very tall, and it was obvious that it was a woman's figure. The figure was covered in a purple and black robe. The hood of the robe covered the person's head, so that everyone could only see the person's face below the eyes. At this moment, on the face that didn't even reveal the eyes, the small red mouth slightly curved into a charming smile, making the figure under the long robe seem to be full of evil aura. Profession, Caster Master. Real name. Attribute, neutral, evil ability points, strength, eater ability, D agility, C magic power, A+ luck, B noble phantasm, C profession skills, position creation, AA servant with the profession of caster has the ability to make a position to collect magic power. Even if the amount of magic power it has is not much, it can also gather magic power by spreading the position, and it can become more advanced magic. A level, the influence of making a position is not only the position itself, but can spread to the surroundings of the position. Even the vitality of the residents living around the position can be used as magic power by the holder of the position. Prop creation, another skill given to caster's servant was the ability to make magical tools, from battle props to daily necessities and so on. They could freely make all kinds of items, and they could even make magic tools called magic attire, which could be used to assist in the performance of magic. Level A, the magic attire that could be made and the magic attire that could be made by ordinary magicians were worlds apart, but it required time to collect and make materials. It was a production skill that required preparation period and planning. As long as there was enough time, it was possible to greatly improve the combat effectiveness of the caster's servant. Protection skills, high-speed God's Word. 8 was a skill that could activate a major magic spell or ritual in a short period of time. It had the ability to shorten the chanting time of a magic spell. Normally, the larger the scale of a magic spell, the longer the chanting time required. However, through this skill, it was possible to shorten the chanting time by a large margin and use an extremely short amount of time to cast a high-level magic spell. At grade A, it could release countless light bullets that could rival a major magic spell in an instant. As long as there was enough mana, it could continuously release powerful magic attacks. Golden sheep skin, X inherited from Calcus. The golden sheep skin has the legend of if it is thrown to the ground, a dragon will appear, but because it does not have the ability to summon a dragon, even if it is used, it can't summon a dragon. Magic. A plus as the holder of the god's magic, it has learned the magic of the mythological era. It has a powerful magic attainment that is completely incomparable to modern magicians. The magic it performs is close to the power of the magical domain. However, because it has not learned magic, it still belongs to the category of magicians. It can't really reach the level of X, but in terms of magic attainment, it is already above the most powerful magician in modern times, even beyond the magician. Even if it can only be completed by using the command spell, it can be done by its own power. It was Castor's servant. Castor's servant, Rin Enbin, who came with Archer, also saw the scene below, and tightly clenched his teeth. Damn, he actually launched an attack in the middle of the day. Is Castor's master crazy? Rin, you have to be careful. Archer stared at Castor's figure below. Maybe her power is not good, but that which seems to be very dangerous, you must not fall into her trap. But, why did Castor suddenly appear here? Rin Enbin asked Noah. Isn't Ryder on guard? Didn't he notice Castor's arrival? Hearing that, Noah did not answer Rin Enbin's question, he just looked at Castor, who was confronting Saber, and jumped to Saber's side. Noah stretched out his hand and confirmed that there was nothing wrong with Saber's arms, and at the same time, he was relieved, and at the same time, he immediately hugged Saber. Aware of Noah's action, Saber was still a little hesitant, but in the end, she chose to deal with Castor first. She did not refuse to hand over Saber's Sakura to Noah's hand. She looked straight at Castor with her beautiful eyes, her expression had a hint of awe. You are really bold, Castor, I can't help it, who told you to have 3 servants here? I can only start with Master, can't I? Castor's servant said with an old voice full of charm, he gently smiled. That smile was full of evil, like a bottle of deadly poison, it made people shudder. However, I didn't expect that your senses would be so sharp. Undoubtedly, I have paid special attention to hide my presence, and I also chose this time when I would not be alerted, but I still failed. I thought that at least I could get rid of Saber's master and get the strongest sword spirit first, then it would be much easier. But now, it seems that I have fallen into the most difficult situation. Castor said that, but there was no trace of fear on his face, which was only exposed under his eyes. Well, anyway, there are as many troops here as you want, although they are not as high level as servant. After saying such a sentence, Castor spread his slender hands. In the next moment, as if responding to Castor's action, a purple mist suddenly filled the surroundings. Under the gaze of Noah, Rin Enbin, Saber, and Archer, the mist that suddenly filled the air slowly condensed into a group, attached to the ground, and as if it was alive, it kept squirming. It didn't take long for a creature the size of a human, its whole body was composed of bones, it looked like a human skeleton, it opened its mouth like a dragon, and it held a weapon made of bones in its hand. Chapter 749. Suddenly, skeletons came out of the purple mist, making the atmosphere suddenly become gloomy to the extreme. Taking a closer look, when the mist spread, the surrounding space became slightly illusory, even the sky turned purple, like a mirage, more or less with an unreal feeling. Seeing the skeletons holding weapons made of bones, and they were still moving, Rin, who was still in the apartment, said in a deep voice. Dragon Fong. You even have this kind of familiar. With this A-level skill, the Castor class servant could even create a tamed monster at will. Those familiar monsters, which were called Dragon Fong by Rin, should be made by Castor with this skill, right? Noah was holding Tosakura, half kneeling on the ground, looking around at the Dragon Fong soldiers that came out of the mist, and then looking at the illusory sky, he narrowed his eyes. Is the enchantment also activated? While summoning the Dragon Fong soldiers, Castor also activated the enchantment. It seemed that even if he chose to do it in broad daylight, Castor was not really unscrupulous, he still cared about the most important rule of mysterious concealment. However, a moment ago, he didn't activate the enchantment, but in this second, he suddenly activated such a large enchantment. Castor's magic attainment was obvious. However, even if he had high magic attainment, in this kind of head-on confrontation, Castor's chances of winning were not high. That was a matter of course. Originally, Castor was not very suitable for fighting. Compared with the rest of the servants who almost all used white swords in close combat, Castor basically didn't know how to fight in close combat. His physical ability was not much better than ordinary humans. Most of the servants had magic skills, which was quite disadvantageous for him. Therefore, compared with Saber, which was known as the strongest class, Castor was regarded as the weakest class. On the other hand, Saber and Archer both had mana manipulation skills. Rin Anbin was a magician, so he would definitely have more experience in dealing with Castor's magic than dealing with the servants who were strong in close combat. As for Noah, he benefited from the curse resistance of the God Slayer. It was almost impossible for magic to work on him. That was why Noah had protected Jian Tongjing in his arms at the first moment. No one was more suitable than Noah to protect Tosakura at this time. However, in the face of this situation, Castor was not afraid at all. He chuckled, turned his head, and looked at Noah. "Hey, Rider's master, why don't you call your servant?" Noah raised his head and looked at Castor's eyes through the hood of the robe that covered his eyes. "What? Can't Saber and Archer satisfy you? Or do you think you can really deal with 3 servants at the same time?" "No, it's just strange that your servant is not with you," Castor said. "Your servant isn't with you, right? Do you think that kind of item is useless?" Prop. Noah's gaze became somewhat thought-provoking. "Undoubtedly, you are a servant yourself, but you think that servant is a prop. That's just for you." Castor covered his mouth with a black glove and said such a sentence. "After all, you can even deal with Saber and Berserker. For you, that kind of servant can only be regarded as a prop, right?" Hearing Castor's words, Noah reacted to one of the information revealed in this sentence. "You can even deal with Berserker. It's useless to hide it now. When you were fighting with Berserker, I was watching in the dark." Castor stretched out his hand in the direction of Noah. "So, Rider's master, do you want to join forces with me?" This sentence made Saber and Archer frown. "Rope in." Rin Osaka, who was observing the situation from the apartment building with a large hole in it, spoke up. "I'm sorry, Castor, we have already joined forces." Hearing that, Castor just glanced at Rin Isaka's direction and immediately looked at Noah again. "Since even that useless little girl can be your partner, there is no reason why I can't, right?" "Useless little girl." Rin Isaka's eyes twitched fiercely. "At best, she's just a magician who doesn't even know how to use magic. As for me, the level of magic I can use will only be higher. It should be more worthy of cooperation than that little girl." Castor still ignored Rin Isaka, even Saber and Archer, and tried to throw an olive branch to Noah. "Perhaps, in your opinion, as a caster in this Holy Grail war, is too big a disadvantage. After all, it is called the weakest class, but I have also made a lot of preparations. If you follow me, you will find that it is not so difficult to get the Holy Grail." Castor's words directly surprised the rest of the people present. Even Rin Isaka's face slightly sank, and he sneered. "You know that you can't deal with so many masters and servants at once, so you plan to make us waver, win a partner, and weaken our strength. You have worked hard." "What? Little girl. Do you think I'm talking big?" Castor didn't care about Rin Isaka's provocation. He said to Noah with a smile. "I believe that a smart person should be able to distinguish whether my words are true or not. I am definitely worthy of your trust, Rider's master." When this sentence came out from Castor's mouth, Noah sighed. Archer, who was standing next to Rin Isaka, laughed. A witch who specializes in evil actually said that she is trustworthy. Don't laugh at me. The atmosphere of the scene suddenly changed. Even in the face of two masters and two servants, Castor's aura became evil and violent. He stared in Archer's direction, his silver teeth were tightly clenched together, even his voice became full of resentment. You called me a witch. You dare to call me a witch? Seeing Castor's mood suddenly became so agitated, everyone present, including Noah, was surprised. Even Castor himself seemed to feel that his emotions were too agitated. He took a deep breath and suppressed the irritation in his tone, but the voice that echoed in the air became indifferent and ruthless. I wanted to talk to you a little bit, but unfortunately, my mood has become very bad now, so, let's play. After saying such a sentence, Castor's body slowly floated in the air, his robe directly spread out like a bat's wings, and his body fluctuated with unusually strong magical power. Immediately afterward, his cold voice turned into an echo, which spread throughout the entire space. Those who call me a witch will all die. As soon as Castor finished his words, purple magic circles that looked like eyeballs suddenly rotated out of his robe. They were like cannons, aiming at the people below. Noah's eyes suddenly narrowed. Saber flashed and came in front of Noah, who was holding Noah, and it seemed that she intended to protect Noah and Tama Tongyin together. However, the magic circle that turned into a battery suddenly turned and aimed at Rin Isaka and Archer in the apartment. In the next instant, dense mana surged through the numerous cannon-like magic arrays. Finally, it converged into a beam of light, and burst out, falling in the direction of Rin Isaka and Archer below. It's an honor to be able to enter the eyes of Castor. Rin Enbin smiled. Undoubtedly, it won't work. I wasted a precious gem. Really, I don't know any gem merchants. As long as you are a magician, you won't be able to win against Castor in a magic battle. Archer said without turning his head to look at Rin Enbin. So, Rin, don't make a move. That's an accurate judgment, Archer. Castor sneered. As long as you are a magician, you can't win against me in a magic battle. As soon as these words were spoken, a faint voice resounded. Is that so? Why don't you try my magic? When that voice sounded, the whole space flashed with a dazzling light. It was a burst of light from a beam of light. A huge magic beam with a diameter of more than 2 meters suddenly rose from the ground, the friction became hot in the air, and in the chaotic twisting sound of the air, pierced through the space, and shot in the direction of Castor. Castor's face suddenly changed. Suddenly, an ancient staff appeared in his hand, and he held it in front of him. On the tip of the staff, a huge defensive magic circle suddenly popped up, protecting Castor. The massive beam of mana struck the defensive magic array. Dong! In the midst of a thunderous roar, the violent shockwaves and flames exploded in midair like fireworks, instantly illuminating the gloomy sky that was filled with purple mist. Bang! Under the bombardment of the huge magic beam, the defensive magic circle that appeared from the void burst open, exposing Castor to the terrifying light beam. Ah! Under Castor's scream, the beam of light directly fell on her body. Bang! A thunderous boom rang out once again. Looking at the entire sky filled with flames, Noah, who was hugging Tongyin tightly and kneeling on the ground with one knee, turned his head and looked in another direction with a magical formation composed of precise geometric patterns in front of him. At the same time, everyone present also looked in that direction. There, smoke was coming out from his body, the robe on his body was tattered, blood was oozing from the corner of his mouth, and he was clutching his chest. Castor was coughing violently, and he couldn't believe what he just saw. Is that a magic bullet? Impossible. Should they really say that Castor's servant? Judging from the unimaginably powerful magical light beam, no one would have imagined that it was a simple, basic magic trick that only processed magical power and shot it out, right? But Castor recognized it at a glance. It was because he recognized it that Castor was so shocked. Is that the magic you used to deal with Berserker? Impossible. Nothing is impossible. Noah looked straight at Castor and laughed at himself. Although it's just a magic spell that is launched after processing mana, it's precisely because of its simple nature that if the user's mana is beyond imagination, the power of the magic bullet will naturally increase accordingly. Unfortunately, I don't have much, but I have a lot of mana. That's why this magic spell became like this in my hands. It's not appropriate to call it magic bullet, right? Noah slowly raised the corner of his mouth. It's better to call it magic cannon. This name should be more appropriate for me. This time, it was Castor's turn to be irritated by Noah's attitude. You're a smart guy. In the shouting, Castor fiercely stretched out his hand. Attack! The surrounding Dragon Fang soldiers suddenly trembled. They suddenly raised their weapons and rushed toward Noah from all directions. It's a pity that Castor forgot. Here, in addition to Noah, Rin and Akka, and Archer, there was another one with the strongest strength. Don't even think about it. Along with this cold voice, a ray of sword light suddenly flashed through the air like a crescent moon. It expanded and swept past the Dragon Fang soldiers that were charging over from the surroundings. Bang! The Dragon Fang soldiers that were slashed by the crescent-like sword light were immediately broken into pieces. They all shattered like glass, scattering into bones that filled the sky and dissipated into thin air. All of them were caused by Saber, who was standing in front of Noah. So, what are you going to do? Noah sneered. In the face of the strongest swordsman, the fully developed archer, the magician you look down on, and the most basic magic, can you still be as confident as before? Castor's servant. Castor's face finally became extremely ugly. Chapter 751. Because the Castor class is known as the weakest class in the game, it is also disadvantageous to the other servants. Therefore, the Castor's servant is generally unlikely to face the other servants head-on. They are bound to consider other ways to win. And the strategy was obviously a key part. Castor didn't suddenly attack without thinking about anything. In order not to arouse Noah's vigilance, Castor deliberately chose to attack during the daytime, and he tried to hide his aura, trying to kill Tong Yingyur first. In Castor's plan, the most ideal result was naturally to deprive Tong Yingyur of her command, so that he could control Saber and make Saber his own combat power. With Saber's servant, plus the strongest magician who could use a variety of magic to support him, as Castor's servant, even if it was the most difficult to deal with Berserker, Castor was confident. When Castor found out that Ryder was not with Noah, Castor was even more confident. Unfortunately, this plan failed from the very beginning. In addition to Rin and Akka, Noah had the ability to sense things, Saber had the intuition skill, and Archer had the mind's eye skill. Even if Castor tried to hide his aura and chose to attack during the daytime, he was still discovered in the first place, leading to the failure of the plan. Of course, Castor didn't know that this plan had no possibility of success from the beginning. The reason was that Noah's scabbard was still hidden in Tong Yingyur's body, and because Noah had just added enough magical power to it, it could once again perform the duty of protection. Therefore, even if Castor was not discovered, when he attacked Tong Yingyur, the scabbard's protection would appear, and it was impossible to succeed. After the plan failed, Castor tried to pull Noah to his side, which also proved that Castor didn't come here without thinking about anything. However, Castor, who had always been thoughtful, was completely angered by Archer's call of witch. That led to Castor's current situation. Understanding this, Castor could only grit his teeth, but he didn't regret it. After all, for Castor, the title of witch was a taboo. Castor had already decided that those who called her a witch should be punished accordingly. However, Castor really didn't expect that the strength of these people was beyond his imagination. Saber's strength was much stronger than the previous servant who was Saber. Since Archer was able to engage in close combat and had a high-level defensive relic, he was not limited to long-range attacks. Noah was even more ridiculous. The most basic and simple, magic bullet, had been upgraded to a whole new level in his body. Not only did it become a complete, magic cannon, he even had the strength to go head-to-head with Saber and Berserker. It could be said that he was breaking the rules. Only Rin Anaka was not a threat to Castor, but it was not that there was nothing to be proud of, at least, she could protect herself. A Saber with superior strength. An archer with no shortcomings. An excellent magician. There was also Master, whose strength was completely unknown. He was unfathomable and had astonishing abilities. No matter how he looked at it, Castor didn't seem to have a chance to win. In addition, although Ryder was not by Noah's side, Noah could summon Ryder back at any time. The situation became extremely unfavorable for Castor. In such a case, Castor could only hide his resentment toward Archer in the bottom of his heart and straighten his body that was full of wounds. Whoosh! A burst of magical power surged up around Castor's body, and Castor's injury seemed to be smoking, and he recovered at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. Servant was originally just a spirit, and even her body was maintained in the real world with magical power. Therefore, as long as there was enough magical power, it was not impossible to use magical power to speed up the healing of injuries. What's more, with Castor's magical skills, there were many magical skills that could speed up the recovery of injuries. With the two superimposed, the seemingly amazing injury was completely healed in just a short time. If it was not a fatal injury, Castor believed that he could find a way to survive, right? The eyes hidden under the hood swept over Noah, Rin Enbin, Saber, and Archer, and Castor suddenly smiled. I admit it, today, there is no way to do anything to you. Hearing that, Rin Enbin was the first to react. What? Do you want to escape? Retreat is also a part of the tactic. Even if you are a heroic spirit, there is nothing to be ashamed of if you choose to retreat, right? Castor smiled coldly. But, next time, it won't be so easy. After that, Castor did not give Rin Enbin a chance to refute. He looked directly at Noah. Think about my proposal, Ryder's master. I welcome you to come to my side at any time and share the Holy Grail with me. After leaving this sentence, Castor's robe covered his body. In the next moment, Castor disappeared without a trace. The surrounding purple fog also slowly dissipated. One by one, the Dragon Fang soldiers went into the mist and disappeared on the spot. The sky was restored to the light again. Obviously, the enchantment had been lifted. Seeing this scene, Rin Enbin quickly said, "Chase him. Don't let Castor escape." Archer. Without making any answer, Archer directly entered the state of spirit form in the mist, and his aura gradually disappeared. Saber seemed to want to chase after him, but she was stopped by Noah. Don't chase him. Looking at the direction where Castor disappeared, Noah said. That servant's magic has reached the level of teleportation. Although there is a trace left, it is almost impossible to catch up with Castor. Saber's figure stagnated, and she frowned. But Archer has already caught up. That guy also knows that he can't catch up with Castor. The reason why he chased him is to track his aura and find out where Castor's base is. Noah shook his head. So, let's leave Castor to Archer. What you need to do is to protect your master. After saying such a sentence, Noah handed the sleeping Matsushita Sakura to Saber. Saber silently took Matsushita Sakura, and it seemed that she also listened to Noah's words. In this regard, Noah just smiled, turned his head, and looked at the direction of his apartment. Damn it! What the hell? That Castor! Inside the destroyed wall, Rin Enbin was still in Matsushita Sakura's room, yelling very angrily. Running out without permission, and then running away without permission. Why is every servant like this? If you want to fight, then fight properly. Hearing Rin Enbin's words, Noah also smiled bitterly. Having said that, the servants that Noah met before, Lancer, Berserker, and Castor were the same as what Rin Enbin said, they all ran out without permission. Although there were many conflicts, other than the serious saber, none of the other servants had the intention to fight it out at this point in time. After all, this war has just begun. Now, it was just a test. It's getting more and more troublesome. Chapter 752. Although Castor had deployed a barrier after the start of the battle, so that the people outside couldn't notice the battle in the apartment. But before the battle started, in order to attack Tong Ying, Castor also rushed in with saber, which caused a big hole in the apartment. Because it was daytime, such an explosion was impossible to not attract the attention of the surrounding people. So, when the enchantment was lifted and Castor retreated, Noah and the others heard the noise coming from the outside. They believed that if this continues, it was only a matter of time before the surrounding people found out about the destruction of the apartment. Looking up at the scene of the destroyed wall behind the apartment, Noah covered his face and sighed. What should we do? Report it to the church. Rin Isaka, who came down from the apartment, directly answered. Because it was a problem caused during the Holy Grail War, the church will deal with it. That's good. Noah suddenly felt happy. I thought I would have to pay for it this time. What's wrong? Rin Isaka said with a smile. Don't you know a jewelry merchant and sell jewelry? You must have a lot of money, right? I do have a little bit of savings. Noah curled his lips. But that doesn't mean I will be a fool. After experiencing several worlds, Noah also made a lot of money in other worlds because of various reasons and ways, and every time when he left that world, he would exchange all the money for gold, gems, and the like. That way, he could solve the money problem in other worlds. Therefore, although compared to the jewelry merchant and other rich people in Rin Isaka's words, compared to the ordinary people, Noah was rich. And Noah's words, I do have a little bit of savings, made Rin Isaka's expression more obvious, and there was a trace of envy and resentment in her tone that was difficult to detect. I hate rich people the most. Rin Dosaka's words were so resolute that Noah didn't know what to say. At this time, Noah remembered. Last time, when Noah went to Rin Isaka's house, because only Rin Isaka lived in the luxurious mansion, he said, really rich people, and as a result, he attracted Rin Isaka's resentful eyes. After that, after Archer's revelation, Noah understood how important money was for Rin Isaka, who was good at gem magic. Because, although it was a magic that even Castor thought was very interesting, and it was also a very famous magic in this era, but the extravagance caused by this magic was exaggerated. After all, gem magic required a gem as a trigger medium. But the use of a gem was a one-time use. That was to say, when Rin Isaka used a gem, the gem would disappear because of the magic to cast to use it. In this way, every time Rin Isaka, he would lose a lot of money. Because of this, Rin Osaka was always in a tight financial situation due to the demand for gemstones, the cost of purchasing them, and so on. She was especially sensitive to money. Therefore, when Rin Isaka met Fujita, the jeweler, her eyes shined. One could imagine how much resentment Noah's words had incurred from this girl who was particularly sensitive to money. Anyway, before the church fixes this place, I don't think I can continue to live here. Noah changed the topic and said with some annoyance. It seems that I have to rent a new place. Hearing this, Rin Enbin's ears suddenly twitched. Immediately after, the fake smile on his face brightened up, and he smiled brilliantly. Ah, Mr. Noah, are you looking for a place to live? Seeing Rin Isaka's change of expression and bright smile, Noah almost subconsciously became vigilant. Is there a problem? Of course, no problem. Rin Isaka, with a beautiful and elegant smile, began to approach Noah with unusual enthusiasm. Actually, I have a good place to introduce to you. Hearing this, Noah immediately understood Rin Isaka's plan. As he backed away from Rin Isaka, the corner of his mouth twitched. The good place you're talking about, don't tell me it's... Rin Isaka smiled sweetly. That smile was like a devil who hid his malice and made others lose their vigilance while slowly inducing them to fall into depravity. Then, Rin Enosaka said, "That's right. Didn't you say my place is good?" At this point, there was no need to explain. This Rin Isaka was definitely trying to take advantage of Noah. Noah was speechless. Are you sure it's okay for an outsider like me to live in the Isaka family's headquarters? It's just that our partnership is still ongoing. During this period, I can still spare a room. Rin Inaka said in a sales tone. Her face was right in front of Noah, and her beautiful eyes were curved into crescents because of her happiness. Anyway, you're just looking for a temporary place to live. Plus, we're partners. If we live together, don't you think it'll be more convenient? That way, they would be able to stay together for a longer period of time, which would prevent them from being picked off one by the enemy. If there were any urgent matters, they could also inform each other in the shortest amount of time. This would also make it very convenient for them to act together. That was what Rin Isaka said. Looking at Rin Isaka's smiling face, Noah became more and more speechless. In the end, he sighed. If that's your plan, fine, just give me 3 rooms. 3 rooms. Rin Enbin paused for a moment, then seemed to understand Noah's plan. He glanced at Saber, who was hugging Tosakura tightly and remaining silent. Needless to say, it was obvious who the other 2 rooms were for. There's no need for 2 rooms. Saber said. I'll share a room with Sakura. Really? Noah was puzzled. But you can't spiritualize, right? Yes. Saber couldn't spiritualize. Servants who weren't Saber couldn't spiritualize. Among all the servants, only Artoria, the King of Knights of Great Britain, was unable to spiritualize. According to Saber herself, it was related to her life experience. So, Noah didn't ask much. But Saber couldn't spiritualize. It doesn't matter if I can't spiritualize. Saber tightened her grip on the Tsingtao cherry in her arms. Her gem-like eyes were filled with a strong will. I just want to stay by Sakura's side. Saber glanced at Rin Inaka and signaled for him to look away. Obviously, Saber was wary of Rin Isaka. After all, Rin Isaka intended to take away Tong Ying's command seal. Noah pretended not to see it. Then, Isaka, you can rent me 2 rooms. I say, do you really plan to keep Sakura with you? Rin Enbin finally frowned, his gaze complicated. She's our enemy. She's our enemy. I don't have any grudges against her. On the contrary, we have a good relationship. Noah crossed his arms and looked at Rin Isaka. So, while she's still in a coma, let me take care of her until she wakes up. Then we can decide how to deal with this. Is that so? Rin Isaka asked aggressively. Is it appropriate for you to not deal with her when she's easy to deal with? It doesn't matter if it's appropriate or not. The most important thing is whether I'm comfortable or not. Noah said to Rin Isaka with a smile. Or do you want to throw the unconscious Xiaoying on the streets? You win. Rin Isaka clicked his tongue and looked at Saber. Do you think that's okay? Accepting the enemy's charity. Why not? Saber answered without hesitation. If it's good for us, why should we accept the enemy's concession? Seeing Noah and Saber showing generosity, Rin Isaka was annoyed that he couldn't be so free and easy. What the hell? Chapter 753. Afterwards, Rin and Osaka notified the church and asked the church's supervisor to suppress the situation of the apartment. He also promised that the apartment would be repaired. Only then did the commotion calm down. Because Mamadori Sakura still hadn't woken up, Noah and the others didn't stay outside any longer. Instead, under Rin's invitation, they went straight to the Nagasaka family's mansion. Originally, both Rin Enbin and Tama Tanjing had to go to school. Today was not a holiday. However, Tama Tanjing was still unconscious, so she could not go to school. However, Rin Enbin's words were clear. Now, Rin Enbin could only bring Noah and the rest to his house. After designating 2 empty rooms for Noah and Tama Tanjing, he took his backpack and went to school. He was probably going to help Tama Tanjing apply for leave. To be honest, Noah was the most speechless at Rin Enbin's actions. The purpose of a magician's existence was to find a way to reach the origin, not to fight. Therefore, instead of saying that a magician was a warrior, it was better to say that a magician was a scholar, a researcher. Under such circumstances, the magician had to have a special place similar to a laboratory where he could study magic. Magicians called this place the magic workshop. Without a doubt, a magician's workshop was as important as a researcher's laboratory. Although it was not to the extent that no one was allowed to enter, it was not to the extent that people could simply barge in. In addition, magicians would generally set up all kinds of spells and barriers in their magic workshops. Some magicians would directly lead the enemy into their workshop during battle and set up traps to snipe the enemy. Therefore, the magic workshop could be said to be a magician's last fortress. Rin Enbin's workshop was definitely in Enbin's house. As a magician with a long history, Enbin's house would definitely have all sorts of magic secrets. Moreover, the foundation of magic was concealment. Therefore, for a magician, although it was not a taboo, it was definitely not a good thing to allow others to barge into their house. However, Rin Enbin just left Noah and Saber in Enbin's house, which was really shocking. If something went wrong and Noah and Saber, who had the highest resistance to magic, accidentally came into contact with some important spell or barrier, causing the magic itself to be disintegrated, Rin and Osaka would be in deep trouble. Was Rin Enbin not worried about this? Of course, Noah did not think about it. From another point of view, he was also unreasonable as he was protecting Tama Tanjing and Saber. From this point of view, Noah and Rin Enbin were jackals of the same tribe. Without a choice, Noah could only let Saber take Tama Tanjing to rest in her room and tell Saber not to run around. Then he followed Rin Enbin and left Enbin's house. Rin Hosaka, who noticed that Noah had caught up to him, stopped in his tracks and asked curiously. "Why are you following me? I want to ask you, what do you mean by doing things your own way?" Noah said helplessly. "Now, Archer is not by your side, aren't you afraid of being taken advantage of by other masters and servants?" "That's impossible, right?" Rin Enbin was still confused. "It's daytime now. And then? Do you want to say that no master or servant will come to trouble you in the daytime?" Noah looked at Rin Enbin. "I can't believe you can still say something like that after Castor's example." Rin Inaka seemed to have just remembered Castor's matter, and his face became pale. "I forgot." Noah almost stumbled and fell to the ground. Forgot? How could he forget such an important thing? Well, it was indeed a good reason. For Rin Enbin, who would only drop the ball at the most critical moment, this reason was really good. Well, anyway, I still have the command seal. If something happens, I can call Archer back. Rin Enbin was trying to cover up his gaffe. He emphasized it with a bit of sophistry. "Besides, your servant is not by your side, right?" Noah suddenly smiled. "Are you sure you want to compare with me?" Rin Enbin was suddenly speechless. That's right. Comparing himself with Noah was the most stupid thing. Even if the servant was not by his side, Noah, who could confront Saber and Berserker, could also deal with other masters and servants. As for Rin Tozaka, although he was also an excellent magician, he was still no match for the spirit of a great hero who had once been a hero in his previous life. Even if the other side was just a spirit clone in the form of a servant, it was still the same. I understand. Rin Anbin could only say with a dejected voice. Then I'll trouble you to send me to school. Well. Noah shrugged. It's no trouble. After that, a man and a woman walked side by side in the direction of Suigunhara Academy. Because Rin Tozaka had gone to Noah's apartment to discuss Tong Sakura's matter, and he also had a battle with Castor, now the time was actually a bit tight. Under such circumstances, Noah and Rin Anbin both appropriately quickened their pace. Oh, right. Rin Anbin suddenly frowned. Why isn't Ryder by your side? From the beginning, Ryder was not in the apartment, so Castor unscrupulously broke into Noah's apartment. If Ryder was on alert, even if it couldn't prevent this situation, it should be able to inform Noah in advance and tell Noah that there was an enemy attack. Moreover, since the morning, even when Castor was fighting, Ryder did not appear. In addition, Noah personally admitted that Ryder was not by his side now, so Rin Anbin couldn't help but wonder. Hearing Rin Anbin's words, Noah narrowed his eyes. I asked Ryder to find someone. Find someone. Rin Anbin was stunned. Yes. Noah said with a blank expression. I asked Ryder to find Tonging. Rin Anbin's face changed, then she clenched her teeth, and her eyes were filled with strong emotions. Tonging. One of the three families in Fuyuki City, the real leader of the Tong family, and the nominal grandfather of Tonging. At the same time, he was also the culprit that made Tonging live a life of misery for more than 10 years. If it wasn't for the mysterious power that has been protecting Tonging, Rin Anbin didn't even dare to think about what would happen to Tonging now. When she thought of this, Rin Anbin's emotions were surging, she took a deep breath and suppressed it. If you find Tonging, what are you going to do? Nothing. Noah replied faintly. Just to avenge Sakura. Rin Anbin was silent. After a long time, Noah heard Rin Anbin's murmur. Why do you want to do this for Sakura? Hearing this, Noah couldn't help but be a little dazed. Thinking back to the first time they met, the girl who felt inferior, negative, and whose face was filled with unease all the time, recalling the girl who begged Noah to touch her in order to replenish the magical power of the scabbard in her body, recalling the girl who danced with him at the ball, was extremely confused about the future, and asked him questions. Recalling the girl who showed him a gentle smile in the archery department of Suichu and Gakuin Academy, recalling the girl's past and the scabbard that he had lost in the girl's body, Noah seemed to feel something and made such a statement. Perhaps, another reason I came to this world is to meet Sakura. Who knows? Rin Anbin suddenly looked at Noah in a daze. Looking at Noah's bitter smile, she didn't know why, but she blushed and deliberately snorted, then turned her head away. Even if you say such a cool line, it doesn't make you look that handsome. After saying this, Rin Anbin quickened her pace, as if she didn't want Noah to see her blushing face. Noah could only let out a bitter laugh and quickly chased after him. Chapter 754. After sending Rin and Osaka to Suigunhara Academy, Noah immediately left. Although there were examples like Castor who would launch an attack in broad daylight, in a school with so many people around, no matter which master or servant it was, they wouldn't dare to make a move so blatantly. In Suigunhara Academy, Rin and Osaka was still safe. Even if there was an accident, Rin and Osaka could still summon Archer to her side with her command spell. Therefore, Noah didn't need to protect her, and he didn't have that kind of obligation. Escorting Rin and Osaka to the academy was already benevolent enough, it was impossible for him to stay there and guard Rin and Osaka the whole day. Therefore, after Rin and Osaka entered the academy, Noah directly left. Seeing the stunned look of the surrounding students, Noah couldn't help but laugh. In any case, Rin and Osaka was still a young lady that everyone looked forward to. Everyone would be dumbfounded if an unknown man from outside the school sent such a charming and idol-like existence to the school. Noah only knew about it when Tong-ing mentioned it in the archery department. Rin and Osaka actually had such a side to her in the academy. However, he had to admit, in terms of appearance, Rin and Osaka did have the qualifications to be a popular and dignified young lady. Although her nature was like a little devil, and she often dropped the ball at the most critical moment, her curse-like physique made people not dare to compliment her. Noah ignored the stunned look of the surrounding students, left Suigunhara Academy, and walked in the direction of Osaka's residence. However, just as Noah passed by a commercial street, an unexpected voice with full of surprise called out to him. "Isn't this the big brother from the other day?" The person called Noah was like a clear drop of water falling on the surface of the water, very light, and full of cheerfulness and happiness. Judging from her voice, she was probably still underage. At best, she was around 13 or 14 years old. However, when he heard this voice, Noah's heart tightened. He suddenly turned his head and looked towards the source of the voice. On the other side of the street, a little girl with long hair that was more beautiful than the snow was standing there. She was wearing a snow jacket, a snow hat, and snow boots. She looked like a little elf that had just been born in the snow. At this moment, the girl was happily raising one of her hands above her head and waving it at Noah. "Big brother. We meet again." The girl's cheerful and cute appearance made the pedestrians around her subconsciously stop in their tracks, their gazes converging on the other party. In particular, some of the men and women had stars in their eyes. There was no other way. That slightly immature-looking girl was simply too cute. She was so cute that even the most delicate dolls and mannequins couldn't compare to her. Under such circumstances, the surrounding pedestrians had no idea at all. 2 days ago, that snow-white girl had just used an innocent smile to order her most loyal bodyguard to kill Noah and his group without mercy. Yes. The girl who looked like an angel was, in fact, a demon who would kill anyone with a cute smile on her face without hesitation. Impressively, it was Berserker's master, Ilyasful von Erzbergen. One of the 3 families that created the Holy Grail War, the Erzbergen family. Encountering Ilya on such a busy road, Noah couldn't hold back and showed a trace of surprise. "Ilyasful." Hearing how Noah addressed her, the smile on Ilya's cute face slowly disappeared and was replaced by a puffed-up cheeks and a very dissatisfied expression. Lifting her little feet and walking towards Noah, Ilya spoke to Noah in dissatisfaction. "You can just call me Ilya." Seeing Ilya walking in front of him puffing up her cheeks and pretending to be angry, Noah almost lost his vigilance against this master who had a servant that couldn't be ignored. At that moment, Noah asked almost reflexively, "Why are you here?" "I came here to play," Ilya answered without hesitation. The expression on her face changed from dissatisfaction to happiness in an instant. "It's too boring to stay in the castle, so I came out to play in the town." "Castle?" Noah asked in confusion. "Ah. Big brother, have you forgotten?" Ilya put her little hands behind her back and slightly leaned her upper body towards Noah's direction. She smiled until her eyes narrowed. "Didn't I say that in the depths of the forest, there is our Erzbergen villa?" After Ilya said this, Noah remembered. Indeed, Ilya did say such a sentence. But Ilya also said that it was only a villa. Since when did a villa become a castle? Or, to Ilya, the castle in the depths of the forest was just a villa. So that's how it is. Noah's mouth twitched. "You are the real rich person, Ilya immediately tilted her head. "Rich person? No, don't mind it. Noah looked around and said. He looked around and seemed to be a little absent-minded. Big brother, are you looking for Berserker? Ilya seemed to see through Noah's thoughts and suddenly smiled. Don't worry, Ilya didn't bring Berserker out today. Didn't bring Berserker out with you? Noah finally frowned and stared at Ilya. You ran out alone without bringing a servant. Aren't you afraid of being attacked by other masters? I can't help it. Berserker is too overprotective. If I bring him out, he will definitely go berserk on the streets. Ilya said matter-of-factly. In that case, I won't be able to play anymore, right? Hearing Ilya's words, Noah wanted to correct 2 points. 1. Berserker isn't overprotective, that's called going berserk. 2. If Berserker goes berserk on a crowded street, it will not only cause you, the master, to be unable to play with him, but it will also cause a lot of unnecessary casualties. And Ilya's words proved that this cute little girl didn't care about 1 or 2 lives at all. For Ilya, when Berserker went berserk, what she really cared about was whether she could play or not and not other people's lives. Sure enough, this little girl was a magician with the appearance of an angel and the heart of a demon. Big brother doesn't seem to have brought a servant, right? Ilya curiously looked around Noah and suddenly thought of something and her eyes lit up. Could it be that big brother also came to play? I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I'm not here to play. Noah rubbed his eyebrows. I'm just sending Tozaka to school. Her servant isn't with her. Send Ling to school. Ilya immediately bit one of her fingers and puffed up her cheeks. In other words, Big Brother will only accompany Ling and not accompany me. Accompany you? Noah sighed. Accompany you for what? To fight? No, I'm here to play today. Ilya said with a smile. So, you have to accompany me to play. Ha! Noah was stunned and almost couldn't keep up with this development. Why do I have to accompany you to play? Isn't that obvious? Ilya showed the cutest smile Noah had ever seen and said such a sentence. Because, I like Big Brother very much. In the surroundings, the pedestrians who had been paying attention to Ilya heard this sentence and many people fell on the street, hit the street lamps, and some even collided with each other and fell to the ground. The remaining pedestrians who weren't crushed by Ilya's confession fell silent for a moment. Then, they looked at Noah with murderous and disdainful gazes. Noah broke out in cold sweat. What kind of development is this? Chapter 755. Humming a pleasant tune, Ilya hugged Noah's arm tightly. Her delicate and pretty face was full of joy and happiness. She followed Noah's footsteps and skipped forward. She seemed to be in a good mood. Noah, whose arm was tightly hugged by Ilya, was troubled. Strictly speaking, Ilya should be Noah's enemy. When she did not have Berserker by her side, it was undoubtedly the easiest to deal with. Even if Ilya had the command spell and could summon Berserker at any time, as long as he dealt with Ilya in the first blow, nothing would happen. Undoubtedly, in such a situation, Ilya was not even on guard against Noah. How could Noah not be troubled? After all, Noah did not feel any falsehood from Ilya's expression that was full of joy and happiness. In other words, Ilya either had some means to ensure that nothing would happen to her, or she did not consider that Noah would attack her at this time. Intuition told Noah that the reason why Ilya stuck to him so unscrupulously should not be the former, but the latter. In other words, Ilya did not consider that Noah would attack her at this time. Does Ilya trust Noah? That's not true. She just did not think about it from the bottom of her heart. From this aspect, Ilya was indeed quite naive. She did not have the self-awareness that a magician should have. Just like her appearance, she was just a little girl who had yet to reach adulthood. However, such a little girl who looked like she had yet to reach adulthood could casually make the decision to kill. Such two contradictory aspects were like the existence of an angel and a demon in that small body, making Noah very troubled. Of course, Noah did not think of attacking Ilya in this situation. Noah was not the kind of person who would do anything for a certain goal regardless of the target. Noah's methods were generally different from person to person. If the opponent was upright, then Noah would face it in an upright way. If the opponent was treacherous and cunning, then Noah wouldn't mind returning the favor and biting back at the opponent. In addition, although Noah and Ilya were enemies, it was only in terms of position. They did not have such a serious sense of mission like Rin and Osaka. In participating in the Holy Grail War, Noah's fundamental purpose was to find the world fragment, not to kill them all. Therefore, Noah could always be so carefree. However, Noah was a little unsure what kind of person Ilya was. An upright person. An upright person. A sinister and cunning person. None of them, right? Because of this, Noah, who was a little unsure of how to face Ilya, was so troubled. He could only accompany Ilya. Then, while Noah was still troubled, Ilya, who was hugging Noah's arm and standing together with Noah like a pair of siblings with a good relationship, suddenly pointed at a place and shook Noah's hand. "Hey, big brother, I want to eat that." Noah, who returned to his senses because of Ilya's voice, subconsciously looked in the direction of Ilya's little finger. There was a small stall there. "That's a crepe. It looks very delicious." Ilya used a pitiful gaze that could sink anyone and spoke with some hope in her voice. "Big brother, will you buy it for me to eat?" "Well, I don't mind." Noah scratched his cheek. "But aren't you rich? Can't you afford a crepe?" "Although I don't know what big brother is judging, I won't bring money. The money is all brought by the maid beside me," Ilya said with a smile. "Also, I only want to eat what big brother buys now." Ilya's words could easily capture the hearts of others, making them unable to help but feel tender love and joy. Noah wasn't directly captured by Ilya's cute words, but he also had no reason to refuse. He could only smile bitterly. "I'll go buy it, right? Just wait for me here." "Okay." Ilya nodded in satisfaction and obediently let go of Noah's hand. She put her small hands behind her back and looked around curiously. Seeing this, Noah couldn't help but reveal a smile. He turned around and walked in the direction of the crepe stall. When Noah bought 2 crepes from the stall and headed in Ilya's direction, the scene that entered his eyes left him slightly stunned. "Hey, little girl, are you walking on the streets alone?" Unknowingly, several men in their 30s and 40s had gathered around Ilya. They had hooligan-like expressions on their faces and were speaking to Ilya passionately. "Judging from your appearance, you're a foreigner, right? Don't you have a guardian by your side? Could it be that you're lost? Do you want us to bring you to your mother?" While saying those words, those middle-aged hoodlums were sizing up Ilya. It was as if they were evaluating a product. It was very dazzling. Don't tell me they're human traffickers? Noah couldn't help but think so. Facing the harassment of the hooligans, the innocent smile on Ilya's face had completely disappeared. Instead, it was replaced with a look of boredom and lack of interest. "Undoubtedly, they're so much older than me, but they don't even know the most basic etiquette toward a lady." "I see. So there are such people here too." "Oh. You seem to be rather cultured." One of the middle-aged men twitched his brows and wore a somewhat vulgar smile on his face. "Sorry, we're not gentlemen or ladies. But we know a lot about the matters between men and women. If you're curious, how about letting us teach you?" The middle-aged man said and gestured to his companions around him. His companions immediately understood and one of them even made a phone call. Not long after, a car drove over and stopped there, blocking the line of sight of the pedestrians in the surroundings. Looking at this, anyone could understand what was going on. Those people were a group of human traffickers. Ilya clearly didn't know what the people surrounding her were planning to do to her. But as a magician, Ilya more or less sensed the malice of others. At that moment, a coquettish smile hung on Ilya's immature but incomparably adorable face, and her ruby-like eyes were suffused with a cruel glint. It's a pity that Ilya isn't interested in you at all. Moreover, she feels that you're an eyesore. Eyesores should be thrown into the sewers and washed away with the sewage. Saying such cruel words with such a cute voice made all the middle-aged traffickers around her stiffen. Some of them couldn't even move. That wasn't a metaphor. They really couldn't move. Because even if they were ordinary people, they could still instinctively feel it. The young girl in front of him seemed to have turned from harmless to extremely dangerous. The middle-aged man who had just gestured to his companions and used vulgar words to instigate Ilya shouted angrily. "You're just a brat. Come with us obediently." After saying that, the middle-aged man wanted to pounce on Ilya, but a hand suddenly landed on his shoulder. "I should be the one saying that." Along with this sentence, the middle-aged man felt the hand on his shoulder suddenly tighten. Then, his entire body floated up. That was the result of the other party forcefully throwing him. Bang! The middle-aged man heavily crashed into the door of the car that had come to pick them up. Moreover, he knocked his head against the door, causing his head to bleed. His head tilted to one side and he fainted. Around them, the human traffickers turned pale with fright. However, before they could react, one after another, a hand was suddenly placed on their shoulders. Then, one after another, they flew out and crashed into the car as well. "What's wrong?" As soon as the assistant driver shouted this sentence, a fist was imprinted on his face. With a bang, the driver fainted. Chapter 756. Looking at the sudden development in front of her, Ilya was stunned. In front of Ilya, Noah appeared to have completed an insignificant task. He held 2 crepes in one hand and extended his other hand to pull open the door of the human trafficker. Then, he threw the badly battered human traffickers into the carriage one after another. Noah was not as merciful to these traffickers as he was to ordinary hooligans. There is no need for a guy who would even lay his hands on children to continue to survive in this world. This sentence contained both rationality and selfishness. In the world of the Dark Bullet, Noah was famous for the shelter of the cursed child. For the sake of those poor children, he even made the choice to let the Tokyo area be destroyed by primitive animals. As previously mentioned, Noah's way of treating people was different from person to person. Facing people who were upright, he would face them in the same upright manner. For insidious and cunning people, he would return the favor with the same insidious and cunning means. But children were not included in this list. Children as pure as a piece of white paper would walk towards the upright side or the insidious and cunning side in the future. It had not been decided yet. Therefore, for these children who were like white papers, waiting for the world, waiting for society, waiting for the environment, and waiting for others to dye their colors, Noah's treatment had always been biased. Therefore, Noah had no need to show mercy to these traffickers who trafficked children. At that moment, after Noah threw all the traffickers into the carriage, he turned around. Gotcha! The next moment, in the car full of traffickers, a slight sound sounded. Soon after, the carriage suddenly drove forward. In front of the car, there was an entrance to an expanded sewer under construction. The undriven car directly rushed into the entrance of the sewer under construction and fell into the sewer. Bang! Not long after, accompanied by a muffled sound that reverberated in the sealed tunnel, the pedestrians around the sewer entrance began to approach noisily. It was just as Ilya had said. The group of human traffickers were all thrown into the sewers and washed away with the dirty water. Noah did not even turn his head, ignoring the noise and clamor behind him, and handed a crepe to Ilya, who was still in a daze. "I bought the crepe, for you." Ilya took the crepe reflexively, then finally reacted. She cast her gaze on Noah's face, and ripples appeared in her ruby-like eyes. "What's wrong?" Noah, who was stared at by Ilya, had a strange expression. "Is there something strange on my face?" Ilya shook her head and blinked. The expression in her eyes was brighter than ever. "Brother, are you protecting me?" "No, I'm just being nosy." Noah bitterly. "With your ability, you don't need my protection to deal with 1 or 2 traffickers, right?" "Liar, brother is protecting me." An unprecedented smile appeared on Ilya's face, and she hugged Noah with joy. "I'm so happy. Other than Berserker, there is actually someone who will protect Ilya. I'm so happy." "What do you mean?" Noah, who was hugged, wanted to bitterly smile again, but Ilya's words surprised him on the spot. "What do you mean by other than Berserker, there is actually someone who will protect you? Could it be that other than Berserker, there is no one who will protect you?" "No." Ilya hugged Noah, and with a smile on her face, she said something that would not make anyone happy. "Even if there is, it wouldn't be to protect Ilya. Instead, it would be to protect Ahrensburg's works and the Holy Grail. Only Berserker would protect Ilya." Everyone said that Ilya's servant was used to protect Ilya. Hearing Ilya's words, Noah became more and more confused. Protect Einstein Bayron's works and Holy Grail. What does that mean? Before Noah could come up with an answer, Ilya, who was tightly hugging Noah, suddenly raised her head and met Noah's gaze with her ruby-like eyes. Then, a smile that was no different from a demon's and as pure as an angel's appeared on Ilya's face, and she said these words. "I've decided, I'm going to make Big Brother mine." After saying that, Ilya's ruby-like eyes flickered with a frightening light. An astonishing magic power aura emerged from Ilya's body, making Ilya's flickering eyes even brighter and more frightening. Magic power even passed through those beautiful eyes and was projected onto Noah's body. Feeling the magic power surging from Ilya's body being projected onto his body along with Ilya's gaze, Noah frowned. Projecting magic and magic power onto others through one's gaze, thereby producing magic effects. That was clearly the magic eye. In other words, Ilya was using the magic eye on Noah. Unfortunately, it had no effect on Noah. The magic power projected onto Noah through Ilya's magic eye had just touched him, but before it could take effect, it scattered as if it had hit a solid wall. The bright light in Ilya's ruby-like eyes suddenly dimmed, making Ilya reveal a surprised expression. "It didn't work. Unfortunately, magic doesn't work on me." Noah turned his gaze to the surprised Ilya. "However, I didn't expect that you would suddenly attack me." Noah finally understood more or less what kind of person this cute little girl in front of him was. She had the side of an innocent child and a cruel, ruthless, and indifferent side. He would do whatever he wanted to do and would never consider whether he would bring trouble to others, or perhaps even bring trouble to himself. In short, she was a willful and reckless young lady who didn't know how to restrain herself at all. Once she had an idea, she would put it into action, regardless of how dangerous it was. Her personality was already a bit twisted. Magic doesn't work on Big Brother. Ilya didn't realize how easily she made a move that would make others view her with hostility. She puffed up her cheeks as if it was natural. "If that's the case, I won't be able to make Big Brother mine, right?" Seeing that Ilya didn't even have a trace of self-reflection, Noah stared at this little girl and his tone became more or less ruthless. What do you think life is?" Noah's ruthless tone made Ilya unable to react. "I won't say stupid things like life is precious. No matter where it is, there are some people who don't deserve pity even if they die. But, similarly, no matter where it is, there are some lives that shouldn't be lost for unknown reasons." Noah said indifferently. "That's why I hate killing innocent people." Since young, Makarov had said this to Noah more than once. Even if it was magic, if it touched life, it would become taboo. It wasn't because life was particularly precious. Instead, it was because treating life as something that could be used or discarded was twisted to begin with. Therefore, magic that touched life was a taboo among taboo. That theory was simply worthless in this world. Not to mention anything else, magicians were a group of existences that would casually kill. Noah wouldn't blindly listen to Makarov's words. Noah was flexible enough to listen to his grandfather's words. Indeed, some lives were very precious. But some lives were filthy and didn't deserve pity even if they died. And Noah was very disgusted with the indiscriminate killing of innocents that would erase life regardless of good or bad. Since he wanted to kill, then why not kill those who deserved to die? This was Noah's thought. I don't expect you to listen to me. Noah turned around. I only hope that you can at least consider it carefully. Leaving this sentence, Noah left. Looking at Noah's back that gradually disappeared into the distance, Ilya remained silent for a long time. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.